the challenge. The market is there, and then we have people who have all the money, like Plan, and then we have the governments of Finland, and then we have Finland, and we have these startups, and we have all this knowledge and research, and Honey is here because Finland is Finland. How is the game going? How is the second period? What is the results? So Pekka, what about the role of Finland in all of this? Why should Finland care? What makes Finland different in the eyes of the world? Why would we be good at this?
If you allow, I first have two reactions. By the way, we are at the Korkeavuoren Katu, and I was last spring in a funeral ceremony of a very good Finnish artist, Erkki Pirtola. And then somebody in this, it was a lovely guy, and then somebody in that funeral speech said, what was before internet? And then nobody, of course, knew. It was Korkeavuoren Katu, because this was the street that everybody met. This was the, the vegetarian restaurant and the small magazines were edited here and others. So you are now in the middle of Peace Street before internet. So, and for some reason, when you spoke about the war or peace machine, I just want to share you one experience which was shocking me. In Basel in January, there was a guy from the US university who has been planning war machines now for 30 years with the drones and so on, and now he has moved to those land-based war machines, that are replacing the soldiers. And he said, that Basel Peace Forum was to tell us something that we haven't heard before. It's a very good concept, by the way, because it's difficult to invent something. And he said he has a problem. What kind of program he puts in this war machine? Is the war machine killing children and also wounded people or not? It's about his programming. What kind of ethical code and moral code his war machine has? And there's a full silence in the room with all kinds of peace negotiators and others. How to give this guy an advice? How to program a war machine? Well, but this was not about Finland. What Finland can do? First people ask, is there something that we have President Ahtisaari and Elisabeth Rehn and other good negotiators and well, I think there's first one thing, of course, that we don't have the colonial past. But somebody comes from UK or France and so you are very easily in the history because people have a long memory what has happened in Africa and the Middle East and so forth. That's an advantage. You come from a Nordic country, it can be any of the Nordic countries. And the second issue that I have found, actually my African advisor one time said to me that, Pekka, you are totally uncivilized when you come here to Sudan. You don't understand that somebody is a minister and a general in the army and somebody is a 16-year-old boy with Kalashnikov in the bushes. You speak same language to all of them. Don't you understand that these people belong to different classes in the society? I said, well, in Finland we speak only one language. We don't pay attention that somebody is from this or that class. And then suddenly afterwards I was thinking that, well, maybe it's an advantage that we are really uncivilized. We don't see the differences between the classes in the society in that sense, that we would behave, use different languages. So it's a universal language to everyone and also universal language to men and women, which is not in all cultures. So these are, I would say, some kind of cornerstones of our identity, which maybe we don't recognize ourselves so clearly, but it's a benefit in a peace market when you address the peace market. And then thirdly, of course, is that peace is very competed area. Everybody wants to make a peace. We always, when we see a conflict on the TV, we hope that, well, we would love that somebody would negotiate peace, but there's already half of these organizations and many others who are not in the room trying to invent something, trying to do something. And to be successful on the peace market, you have to be better. You have to know the situation, you have to have better analysis, you have to have better contacts, and hopefully better financing and better ideas. And I think it would be a very good role for Finland to really compete on that peace market and make products, make ideas. Products cannot always, do not have to be, of course, physical products. They can be inventions on methods, inventions on how to approach the situation, to whom to talk to. Women, for example, we are now supporting women peace mediators because we have noticed that there are not women actually at all at the table. We are talking to civil societies instead of talking only to heads of the societies. We are making opinion polls among the supporters of terrorist groups, asking why do you support this group, and so forth. These are innovations that we should create.
Okay, so Finland has a place. Now before you give the researchers a female view on this, let me make I made a calculation. Everybody has heard of the migrant crisis that comes from Syria. Because of Syria and because of Iraq, all of these refugees, asylum seekers came to the European Union. Now, the tech community said, let's solve this with technology. And they created my friend Mike Butcher created this thing called TechFugees. TechFugees is a great initiative where everyone starts developing something. Now, current state of the refugee crisis and how this migrant crisis is being dealt with is catastrophic. We have had thousands of small projects that have sort of like someone has developed something, but they have had absolutely no impact. These projects have been supported by a small group of people, and we have had thousands of small silos, thousands of small development projects that have led to actually nothing. Simultaneously, technology has had a huge impact. Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, all these kind of crypted, non-crypted things, really basic things, even SMS has actually given a lot of guidance and taken the faith of people, individuals, families into their hands. Go to Finland, it's safe, whatever. So what we've seen is that the tech community and the traditional mechanisms of tech communities' approach has failed. Now, what should we do differently? As we now are starting, as Pekka has already officially said, Finland will start creating itself the momentum and the gravity that is necessary to become the heart and the brains of this Peacetech community. What do we learn out of this? Why did we fail, and what will we do differently?
Well, I'll have another example of why Finland is amazing. I'm a part of IECU project we're looking at improving effectiveness of European Union crisis management. And yesterday we actually had an audience with Minister Risikko, which was fantastic. But there I was, joined by actually our military colleagues who are here, thanks Elisa for coming, Laura University, CMC Finland, Vincent, and me from a think tank. And I looked around at us, and this combination of the military, the civilian, an educational organization, and a private, private think tank in any other European country is completely unthinkable. I mean, to talk to Elisa, as I can actually call her, in the UK would mean that I would have to have some special permission, they would do a background check, then they'd have to clear me, then I would never be able to go to Santahamina to talk to anyone in the military, and it would all be incredibly cumbersome. And that's where the Finnish strength comes from, because in crisis situations we need to talk to the military actors, we need to talk to the civilians, we have to engage with the NGO community, we need to talk to the tech community, and we all sort of need to, challenge ourselves to talk to different kinds of people and get out of our comfort zones, because then we can bring these solutions to conflict areas which are already kind of much more thought through. And then, as my colleague said, the local ownership, which is incredibly important when you look at the demographics of post-conflict countries, and you actually look at how many young people. We're looking at young economies, young technologically savvy people who very well often know what their problems are. And if you just help them along the way, they can often really find the solutions for their own problems as well.
Okay, so Timo, you've been involved in the creation and development of technology, and standardization of technologies.
Not actually standardization. I have been looking for means to make technology less standard, to be more human-like. So because we all are very different in very many millions of different ways, and it's really a shame that technology is still such that there's a kind of conceptual system that is one, and so on and so on. So we need to have technologies which are more human-like in order us to be less machine-like. But we need to be able to take advantage of those huge opportunities which are coming up, we have to do other things that we have done so far. So I need to, for example, demonstrate. Hello, I'm really happy that you are here. May I hug you? So, in order to we can do differently things. And we have our rational mind, we have our emotions, we have all the analysis. I have been working on artificial intelligence and machine learning neural networks for 30 years now. And now, as I got cancer and I will possibly be dead in a year, I know that there are great chances, but they are a bit futuristic. But I know very clearly that there are very many opportunities which go beyond everything we have seen as humankind so far beyond in 20, 30 years ago. It's we don't need governments anymore. We don't need parliaments. By the time when we can have meetings among millions or even at the most billions of people, everyone in the world can sit in the same table thanks to the support of technology. I can't have the time here to explain, but in this book on Peace Machine, I will hopefully be able to explain it clearly enough by the end of the year. We have very many things which create opportunities for businesses, but of course we need to also have such arrangements that people who can't afford to have good life can also have it, because the prosperity in the world we really have. And one of those things is that if all the investments that go into fines and wars would be invested in a good way, actually the world would be already immediately much better place. And everything that people can find at grassroots level, so that's one of the ideas, that the technology can be there in billions and billions of instances every day in such a way that no war would even emerge in the end.
Cool. So let's go to the business side. Who's here who wants to have a good salary, a decent salary, and work in an environment that enables you to live? Who needs money for living? Hand up. You don't need any money? So, currently, the way the world works is when a crisis happens somewhere, poof, the crisis happens, the first thing that happens is military, but we have humanitarian people who go there and look at, try to feed people, try to deliver food, medicals, and then the humanitarian community steps away. Humanitarian community is financed by governments and instances who do not like profit, okay? Then comes development aid. People who come and look at and say, based on the research by Jacques, it should be done like this, it should be done like this, and they produce white papers, black papers, whatever papers, and then development starts taking place. Development doesn't like profit. Now, then at one point in time, the community, the society should be working up again with new businesses, with a new structure, and everybody who's working in a growing economy needs one thing from the corporations who are working in the community, and that is profits. So the classical method of rebuilding societies is such that it actually says profit is bad, but in order for it to work, it needs profits. So the challenge is how to make this non-profit, for-profit, how to make this kind of coexist. Now, let's take an example of Plan's 800 million budget. So you're the $800 million man, Mika. What part of that 800 million goes actually to businesses?
Well, the 800 million is a global figure, the Finnish one is, but yeah. I think the businesses are probably, I don't have a direct answer, but probably...
Nobody notices, it will not be taped, it will not be...
Yeah, but they are probably donating funds to Plan, for example through the CRC programs, and then occasionally we are also buying services for them. But I think we want to go beyond that. There are many cases where we have been building products with the companies.
Yes.
With the companies.
So you can continue with that because I'm trying to make a point here.
Yeah. Good.
Corporate social responsibility. Do you know what that means? Mm-hmm. Corporate social responsibility is a balance sheet item that a company spends on good things that they can tax deduct.
True.
Good. CSR funding is not linked to research and development and creation of new technologies. And that is a big thing. Startups create new technologies. Startups need revenues. Startups need to be profitable so that they can grow. CSR funding would somehow need to go to these for-profit startups in order to be able to use the new technologies. Like you're saying, you are already doing it. You are collaborating with Finnish companies, taking actually their for-profit money and using that as a part of the CSR. You should be actually wearing their t-shirts while doing the good things. And this is also something where Finland should be playing a leading role. And Mika, now you can continue explaining about the programs that you have rolled out and you plan to roll out, developing new products and technologies with private sector.
Yeah, I think this is far more interesting and far more useful than the CSR. That's kind of a asset balance sheet stuff. We have several projects where we have identified needs from the ground, from different program countries. For example, I was talking about Uganda. So the need to collect data on a digital, on a mobile phones, or the need to show digital content like videos in rural, low-resource settings. And many of these identified real needs. Then we have been starting to collaborate with startups, with companies to design new solutions, new products. There's one startup here, Pajab, that we have been developing a digital data collection tool called POIMapper. So it started from the identified need from plan countries, and now it's a profitable business for the startup. It gets lots of customers outside development sphere. For example, even kind of gas companies and you know the whole industry. And that's good because it keeps the startup and the company profitable, which means that that product will exist in the market in the future, and that's why Plan can also rely to the product. In most cases, NGOs are bad customers. We don't want to pay the full price. So usually if you develop products, even if it's for Peacetech or development, try to make it such a multi-use tool that it will be used widely, not only for the good cause, but in overall, so it keeps the sustainability, and then you can also use it for the development.
Okay. Now, Pekka, if you can say yes, that is exactly what the Finnish government wants, then we have sort of like the deal is sealed and done and dandy and everything is good.
Maybe the Peacetech, it's exactly like said that usually it's products that are used also for other purposes than only in the crisis situation and so forth. Then that's for the market. When being twice a development minister, actually there was a queue in the room of Finnish people who are making new inventions. We are very good at making all kinds of inventions. Most of them were like wooden buildings or temporary houses which would be used for the refugees and others. And it was very painful to explain that, you know, the cost to bring these through the sea are so much higher, and if you really want to have houses in Haiti, you should actually take the concrete scrap and make houses out of that, and don't start to make wooden houses from Finland to Haiti and so forth. But people had a lot of innovative ideas. But that was actually one generation maybe of inventors who wanted Finland to do good and so forth. Norway tried it. They made a huge hole in a mountain and stored all kinds of things for crisis, and I think half of them never ended to the real market because it's too complicated, this kind of system. But I think what is now about the technology, this is very interesting because it's apps that can be used, it's something like that. It's totally, and other which is very, very important is the energy, small scale energy production, whether it's solar or wind or something like that, which can be used in emergency areas immediately. It's very, very important.
Okay, so we have the last 5 minutes of the panel. And if, you know, I have drafted a plan based on your input. We should, including Slush and all these components that we have been involved in, are involved in, we should actually create a peace design collective that would have its physical center here in Finland, the beautiful fine land of Finland. And this collective would be a collective that communicates with technology companies, standardizing things and looking that things actually work across all of these devices and all kinds of topologies and whatever. It should also collaborate with the researchers. Here at Helsinki University, for example, we have empathy research, we have compassion research. In Lappeenranta University of Technology, we have trust research. So we have all these components that are required from the behavioral science or the psychology side to actually support the implementation of technologies. And then we should have the policy making side. So this collective would have three, and then but at least three. One towards tech sector, one towards research, and one towards policy making. It would be an open forum for people to come, for projects to feed information into this collective, and for the collective to publish things. So that things wouldn't remain in the silos, but they would be spread across those silos, using digital and using mobile and using these future tools as mechanisms to make those walls of those silos not just visible through them, but actually enable them to pass documents and pass processes through them. And I think that this kind of a collective would be a good idea. Now, during the last 3 minutes, if you don't think that this would be a good idea, you're allowed to state your concerns. But I think that would be a really, really good thing to happen, because Stanford Peace Innovation Lab looks at these hubs. We at Slush, we have the Global Impact Accelerator, where the Foreign Ministry of Finland supports the collaboration between and amongst the hubs around the world, developing locally relevant tools using globally accepted processes and technology. So there's only one group of people who can make this not happen, and that group is us. Or am I missing something? Timo?
We are leading USA by 1-0, so I think we can do it even better than California.
Okay, that's good. But what do you think of it? Do you think that this would work?
Of course, and we need to do it. We actually, Finland and Nordic countries are among the best scientifically in very many ways. So we should have good confidence in doing things which you suggest. And I think, for example, just the specific area of machine learning and neural networks, Finland has been for decades one of the best countries in the world. Now we have been losing the situation because it has become so important that the largest companies in the world have taken up. But the situation is such that we have so many things in here that we would need to trust that our competencies are sufficient, and then we need to have empathy, we need to have collaboration, but we can compete too in order to be competitive in this field, and we have that challenge, we have that opportunity.
Maria, how do you see this?
I think it's a great collective. However, don't forget about us peace and conflict researchers.
You're there. You have your thing.
Okay, there's about 50 years of study into conflict dynamics, conflict proneness, conflict triggers. We have an awful lot of knowledge of how conflicts actually work. And so integrating that with everything else, including hopefully the military, I think, and civilian actors and state actors, I think you start having something really fantastic.
Honey.
I think Finland should use its Finnishness. Do you know that?
What is it?
It's being Finnish. So that's being neutral. This is how I see Finland. This is how we see Finland. This is how, what Pekka was saying, Finland or Nordic countries, they're not from the colonial past. So when a tech or a peace company comes to offer something in the Middle East, if you're from US, France, no, England, no, Finland, yes, Finland, peace, Finland, Nokia, Finland, Rovio, Finland, Heyday, Finland, yes, I think it should be used as an entry point. It's neutrality and its acceptance worldwide. And there's a market for that.
With these words, because we're Finns and Finnish, we can never be finished. That's like an advantage. Now thanks for the panel. The next 15 minutes, we will be throwing this non-conflict causing catchbox. So we will make peaceful throws to the audience. Is there anyone from the audience who would have a question or a comment? And you're talking to the...
Oh, this is mine? Hi. So I have a question for Pekka, and the question is about, there's been a lot of talk of like conflict and how to resolve conflict. There's like taking a stance on the negative view of conflict and the positive view of conflict. In your view and your experience, having dealt with conflicts around the world, what do you see as the biggest chance to prevent any conflict from happening in the first place?
Maybe it's a good question, and as I made a short note that very often people are looking to resource-based conflicts, and of course nowadays even maybe environmental conflicts. You know, there is climate change and people have to leave from the areas and so forth. But I'm more and more looking actually other reasons. I'm looking to marginalization. I'm looking to different political opinions, different religional opinions, views, and so forth. And I'm saying that we have more immaterial reasons for conflicts than material in nowadays world. And I'm actually, some of you might have been in school reading the hierarchy of needs, Maslow, nice pyramid. And my friend who is a doctor said that Maslow never made any experimental work among, he just took it out from his Stetson. Yeah. You know, that first we need to have warm clothes and things like that, and then the spiritual needs are up in the pyramid. But when you start to make the research, you found out that people's needs are not in this order. Some artists might suffer hunger that they can use their creative power. People in the concentration camps put part of their bread aside and make statues or small sculptures out of that. Crazy, but their needs were something other than material. And I think I'm always, when I look in this Maslow hierarchy, where is the honor, where is the pride, which is very, very important when you go in Middle East or in North Africa and others. If people are losing their face, it's disaster. And these are sometimes missing in our very rational explanations. And therefore, to prevent the conflicts, I would look actually these deep roots, marginalization, sometimes even proudness of people, and all these immaterial issues of the identity, respect. And then have the early warnings also based on this, not only that somewhere is a fight over oil resources.
Good. Maslow's pyramid way, Rice, 16 basic desires, scientifically verified the motivational aspects why we humans work. 16 of them, one of them being passion. Anybody else wants to have questions? Comments?
Hi, I'm Richard. I've been involved in taking startups down to East Africa. I think one reason for Finland to also be involved in this is Finland has, without doubt, a world-leading status. I think I'll pause.
You can pass it.
Yeah, are we done? Okay, good. Yeah, so we have slush and all these great things in Finland that are world-leading things. And I think, Shimon Peres talked a lot about how Israel was planning. I don't know how far it's gone. I haven't been kept track, but how they could use their startup building, business building, to help create peace in the Middle East. And obviously this is something that Finland has to offer. And it sort of starts from the point that the phrase, the devil makes evil work for idle hands, kind of thing. So have you got any comments on that side of things?
This is now the scary microphone because I'll soon be
You can hide behind it. So
I think I would actually like to follow up with Haavisto's point a little bit, just by saying that typically what we see in conflict situations is a process called othering. So that we start looking at differences between people and figuring out that you're not like me, you're not a person like me, you're completely different. Wait, I don't like that shirt, you know. And the more you get a polarized society of extremes, the easier it is for conflict to erupt, and the larger the differences between people. And here I think, as a kind of an everyday peace-building exercise, is to try and not create those differences between you and other people, to try and cope. But there also, I think, one of the very natural ways that one builds a community is through working together. When you start working together, when there's Palestinians and Israelis working together in the same company, doing very similar tasks, it's very difficult to create that othering. And so businesses, in addition to probably being able to create Peacetech, are also able to create peace through creating community, which lessens these kind of divides.
Yeah, that's also one of in the artificial intelligence, Gordon Pask has the conversational theory, a method where any conversation leads to added knowledge and added wisdom and less of conflict, and that's also...
And that's very important. Social systems and cybernetic systems are something where these kind of otherings and other phenomena like this are actually essentially influence what kind of conceptual system, what kind of linguistic systems we are dealing with, and how we enhance our view on others and not let emotionally and conceptually narrow down.
Cool. So hope exists, and we are the hope. Pekka, throw it.
Yeah. I have a question. We talked about communication technology, how it connects people and probably has or makes peacemaking easier. Also connected to othering and polarization, during the last year or so, at least, we've seen quite worrying signs of how social media, most notably maybe Facebook, creates these bubbles where we actually polarize more. We get connected, but we also just, we create our own bubbles. If anyone has some comments on this, it would be changed.
To the answer, let's get back to Finland. And I think there's a point of we are not only exporting ideas and peace mediation and technology to elsewhere where there's a conflict. There are also small conflicts happening in our society continuously. I have an example from my home community, Mäntsälä, where for the first time ever, 9 refugee families from Afghanistan are now located there. And over the few months I was watching the discussion on Facebook channel. Every commune has its own Facebook channel. And the kind of hate speech, the amount of it, although from a small minority, that was astounding. And that was shocking to the community itself. And it was leading into actual physical conflicts where some local Finnish guys were starting to beat up the refugees so that they were too afraid to go to school anymore. And this is happening in Mäntsälä in 2017. So in one way you could say it is connecting people, it is peace technology, Facebook connecting people. Those who wanted to support the refugees through to the acculturation process, they were organizing their own Facebook groups. We have our Facebook, WhatsApp rings and so on, but so did the other part as well. And so the very interesting at the moment is that while both parties are still discussing on Facebook, I'm not sure if we have gotten any closer yet. So the platform, having the platform to meet itself hasn't solved that. People are still repeating the same arguments over and over again to each other. not finding any resolution. And here's what takes it to go to the next level is the interesting part.
Mikael. And then Timo. Now let's keep them answers 15 seconds.
All right. Well, okay. I had a point on conflict escalation. What's happening in Finland also in polarization of the discourse on the refugee situation is basically a human phenomenon. It happens everywhere in Africa where you have displaced people of refugees. It happens in the Middle East and everywhere where you have new people coming. But especially now in Finland where we don't have the tradition of receiving people in social fabric in a sense. That at least it seems like that. But there's a great conflict escalation framework from Friedrich Lars, Austrian researcher. You should look into that and really look into how the situation has gone from the tension of the conflict to sort of the debate, fixed positions, hate speech, sort of targeted attacks and so on. And it's a dangerous path. At some point you get into the sort of lose-lose situation where it's very, very hard to come back. So definitely let's keep an eye on the Finnish situation as well. Yeah.
And actually the social media has broken the silos, so we don't have any silos left because everyone who is telling something in a drunken mode is heard of everywhere. So that's why we need mutual respect, mutual understanding and technology for that.
Thank you. I'm just pushing it, and then Tuomas, yes, and then we have here, yes.
Thanks.
Please, short, thank you.
So one of the first things that were mentioned today was that, well, the problems are complex, the world is complex. So I would really like to know from you guys what kind of really actionable advices do you give to us? Because in order to, what should we, the audience and all the guys who are watching at home, do in order to actually get a better picture of the world, a better model of the world? Because if we don't know the problems, the exact problems, how can we actually contribute to solve them? So since there's like so many different kind of backgrounds here, even though they're all going towards the same goal and working for the same goal, I would really like to know what kind of advices do you give to us?
Okay. 3 words advice. Everyone, please.
3 words. Again, I repeat it, and I'll repeat till the end of my life, is to get to the source, to get to find out the real needs with the people. Yeah, I've been in so many meetings, or it's a few more than 3 words, but I've been in so many meetings around the same table. There are white men like me talking about issues that are happening 5,000 kilometers away, and we are trying to figure out what would be the solution. And every time I'm kind of pinching my cheek like this is not right. So that takes money and time and you know, effort to get to those roots. Thanks.
Yeah, well, my advice would be to follow your passion, to really do what you want, and if you're really interested in solving conflict, go and work on those processes and apply for organizations and learn the conflicts and so on, and get from there. But I would also be a little bit opposed to sort of mission-driven approach only to conflict resolution. We need to be also ambitious in really doing something beyond ourselves and sort of giving ourselves to the processes and coming up with new solutions where we can add value the best. So I would advise also to keep your other foot in the startup and technology field if you're going to the peace world, definitely. And if there would be initiatives that you could work through sort of by interventions with different companies and so on in the development countries and conflict countries, I would definitely advise to do so. But there must be more ways to engage, because I hate it that you have to throw yourself into the conflict world. That find your ways, find your own ways to work on those issues. That's my advice.
The reason why I'm pushing is that by 8 o'clock we all have to be out of here and the place has to be cleaned. Okay? And there's a half an hour for us to mingle. That's why I'm short.
Mutual respect, Mark Nelson's and our chair's materials, and then good collaboration in good spirit.
first comment is actually about the algorithm and the bubble that we are speaking about. I had an earlier parliamentary advisor who wanted to buy good products from Varustelleka, and when he was clicking enough Varustelleka, he ended up to getting all kind of Nazi information to his page, and then all other advisors in the parliament, when they click what they like, they get the vegetarian restaurants in Kallio and so forth, and this is the bubble. And we are, when earlier you had a newspaper where you probably read something that you didn't like to read, but it was in the same newspaper, but now in your bubble you don't need it anymore to even read that, and that isolates you from that. Actually you are going to the silo through internet technologies, partly, which I'm quite concerned about. My second, actually, what to do is I like very much this UN Agenda 2030 for next 15 years. If you want to have some kind of roadmap, what issues to do, issues are there. I like the goal number 16, which is actually good governance, institutions, very dull issues like collecting taxes, helping ministries to work and others, because in all fragile states, these are the lack of the transparency, the poor administration are in many ways also the sources of the chaos.
Well, I'd actually like to address this question of the immigrants and the Facebook, and just say that in this kind of situations, the problem needs to be changed. So when you have, as typically you have in Finland, angry young men, it seems, on one side, and slightly less angry young women on the other side, you need to change the situation so that you engage the rest of the community. And that you have older men, older women, community leaders, and that you don't talk about all immigrants or no immigrants, but you start talking about smart immigration, about respect, so you go from black and white to actively trying to create a grey middle. And that's how you create peace. As for what you can do, people like me and the Finnish peace community and the crisis management community, we need support. Just quite simply that, and that support doesn't need to be money, but we feel like we do really important work, and not a lot of people actually realize that this kind of work is happening and it is being done. In addition, I would just like to note that conflict resolution and conflict solving is an everyday skill that we all need all the time. And it's also a transferable skill that you can take into these really horrible situations, but we all need it in our everyday lives. And so I would encourage you all to try to learn some more skills to become better conflict resolutioners in your own lives.
I love the way our panelists address the 3 words concept. I admire it so much that I've extended the Q&A time with 10 minutes because I actually read the schedule. So it's okay. Just use more than 3 words, honey. Or show the 3 words, please.
Api, I will not disappoint you. 3 words, just do it.
Okay, just do it. Tuomas.
Sponsored by Nike.
Thanks, Api.
I'm Tuomas. Been working also sometimes in developing world. What's the difference between blocking the Facebook in China and Vietnam? In Vietnam, the Facebook is blocked if there is a demonstration gathering. So basically, the government puts the block on the Facebook so that people cannot get together and gather the forces. That's to enhance the stability and harmony in the world. In China, the Facebook is blocked until there's an international conference when the journalists and those can access Facebook, and China can show that there is peace, there's access to information. Why Facebook is blocked? To promote the stability, peace and harmony in the world. Just to say, these things are very different terms, different cultures, different contexts, different states. Quite often the question is that, do we want to have democratic conflict, or do we want to have stability with dictatorship? Nothing else to add. Thanks.
That was an interesting. Was it a question, Tuomas? I guess that's to the whole audience, I think.
I would say that we need to have an intermediate way technologically, for example, because it's not fair that common people need to be afraid because of the threats and all these kind of things. So the violence shouldn't be in our streets because of the technology. So one solution might be, and it's not straightforward, but to have a chair. Please, Mr. Virtanen, if you continue with your threats, we have to exclude you from this discussion, or something like this. One way of doing it.
But because it was about the human rights also, how do we react to the human rights? I tried in the beginning to say a little bit that let's be more pragmatic. I'm just coming from Stockholm, where the Speaker of the Parliament told the Finnish parliamentarians he cannot visit China, he cannot visit Thailand, or he cannot visit Hungary because there are so deep human rights violations in these three countries. And I have to say that we Finns, we are quite pragmatic, I have to say. We were a little bit surprised. But I mean, we still, I think we cannot afford that kind of style that we just condemn from a long distance and do not meet it.
Did you, Erika?
I had a short one on this one first, just quickly. The authoritarian regimes, that's an interesting one on how to support them best in sort of inclusive policy processes or democratization, how to put it, because everything's not always black and white and not always a complete change of transfer of power is possible either. And I found out in the Middle East Gulf area that there's authoritarian regimes where there's actually quite genuine will to include people, grassroots people into policy decisions also, but not on our terms, not on our terminology language, but on local ways where if we could provide appropriate technologies to facilitate those inclusion processes or dialogues, I think that could be also one way of slow transfer of government towards more inclusive policy. Yeah.
Okay, that was.
Thank you.
Oh, what a catch!
Hi. So continuing a bit of what you said, I just wanted to point out again that there was some talk about creating this group or community of people, Finnish people, I assume, from different fields, gathering together, trying to solve the global issues on peace and conflict. So what is the role for locals on this? I mean, I would really.
The collective that we mentioned.
Sorry?
The collective that we talked about. It will be global.
Yeah.
Yeah, global. Not Finnish. It will be based in Finland.
Oh, okay.
But it will be global.
Okay. But anyhow, I would like to hear like more in practice about the inclusion of the locals in all these peace processes. How would that be facilitated?
The basic method of design thinking, if applied, then that always includes the locals, so the local population through if you use design thinking as a method, as an overarching methodology, always tries to include the locals.
I can tell you an example from Mogadishu. I met when war was still really heavily ongoing in Mogadishu. I was in Villa Somalia. There were nicely dressed ladies who came there, business ladies. I asked, what are you doing? We are bringing products from the ships to the kiosks and small shops while the men are fighting and so forth. And then we have a hobby. We have a peace moment, Hanad. And I asked, what are you doing? Where we are going to the roadblocks. We look underage, minor guys with Kalashnikov. We buy the Kalashnikov away with $250. And if the guy agrees, we pay his education. And we have invented here in Mogadishu this kind of issue called disarmament. Have you ever been thinking in New York or in Finland or in Brussels that disarmament could be a great solution to the wars? And I said, well, ladies, there's a lot of talk about the disarmament, but what I can guarantee is that nobody knows that you here on the ground are doing this thing with your own money. And when the international community arrives, nobody notices these people, nobody cares about them, they are just overlapping, they are building their own institutions, and this is a pity for many, many peace processes. And so I think you really got the point. How to include the local people and the local initiatives, which are ongoing there already when the war is ongoing, like we see in Syria and so forth. Good people on the ground who are trying to do their best.
So that's one of the things that this community should do, is put new technology and new solutions into people's hands, into their mobiles, so that they can use them every day, and then create these iterative processes where the users are included in the creation of those services while using it. So bypassing the existing slow and heavy mechanisms of decision making. Yes?
I'm Anne and I'm from Peace Organization Committee of 100. And I have a question about the role of the arms industry. So last year the world's military expenditure was like $1.8 trillion. So war and armament is a big business. So my question is that how do you see that, is it possible that the Peacetech could kind of tackle the arms industry? So how is there possible that the companies that are now focusing on kind of a war tech and developing the weapon technology, that they would focus on the Peacetech?
It's okay.
Thank you for this question, because I think just as we have carbon footprint credit, we should have war machine credit, if you want to call it that way. And this way we could fund the Peacetech initiatives. So for any countries or companies producing these weapons, they have to pay for this kind of credit, and then this will help somewhat fund. And I think Finland should be the stockbroker for this kind of activity. There's already in the US a carbon footprint credit bank. I think it could be affected in Finland, where any company or country exporting arms will have to pay some kind of tax for this. And this will help funding the Peacetech initiatives around the world.
That's actually a great idea, because my friend Osmo Soini, what I always says is that the only way to actually make people change their minds is to tax them. You, and then one last question.
I wanted to talk about this arms industry as well. I think a lot of the arms industry is also now looking at different crisis management functions, natural crisis, whether they can have dual-use technologies that can be used in military conflicts, but also in other. And I think the problem that you point out, which is a very good problem, sorry to bring up one so late in the game, is that the Peacetech doesn't become kind of dual-use Peacetech technology. So as the technology itself is not necessarily either kind of Peacetech or conflict tech, how do you ensure that it stays Peacetech and that the analysis isn't used for other purposes? And I don't have an answer for that. I just put it out there.
It's the collective minds of humanity that needs to come up with a solution for that.
Thank you very much. I'd like to bring up the issue that I haven't heard being mentioned so far, which is very important though. We're not talking about hazards of technology, we're talking about benefits, and we're talking about all the positive things that come along with it. But for example, if we talk about all the data that there is out there about every person who uses certain apps or certain technology, we're not talking about all the interested parties who might misuse that data. And as Timo said, it's very important to build peace upon mutual understanding and respect. But how can we build respect if people will not be able to see anything beyond their own interests? So if the interested parties will know that you are interested, you have those, they've constructed a psychological profile of the user, they know that you sympathize with some populist parties, and why wouldn't you just read all the articles about that? Why would we even want to see anything beyond that? And we don't have that many social media channels. We have Facebook, we have Google, there's a limited amount of apps that a person can use per day, and usually these are the big ones. And so the question is, one for the government, for example, how can we protect the citizens of a country from, or how can we protect the data? What laws can be passed to protect data? And another would be to the tech companies and to startups. How do you protect the data of your clients from the corrupt interests?
I love this point. And that's also one of the reasons why Finland and our startup ecosystem, our broader technology ecosystem, is the best place for peace. Because here, a friend Ulf Helsingius, when the internet, prior to internet being born, he fought for anonymity in court. He did not publish the names of the people who were using his bulletin board service. The ethical component of open source movements such as Linux is built on the community. Everybody works for the community, and the community is us, and we are the community. And that is one of the core components. Richard, Erica's slush work, the work that we are all doing is there. That is a value that is native to this environment, to Finland. So one of the reasons why our flag should be flying out also after the US game. But that's a good question. It needs to be born out of the community. The community, each individual who works in this community has to respect those guidelines and has to understand that there is no compromise. People's lives are at risk. If, for example, in the refugee crisis, someone gets to know that this person is doing this, the families can get killed. That is not allowed to happen.
The problem is that there is so much commercial interest involved.
Yeah, but
it's very difficult to...
We cannot, that is one thing, we cannot allow commercial interests to avoid us from using technology to create peace.
Yes, that's true, but we can also not avoid
No,
them using
we
our
agree,
data
but the community is the one that has to create that ethical component.
That is true, and that is very important.
Yeah.
And how is that to be done?
It is done, it's done every day in Finland. Has been done, will be done, and is done. Ask people who build these things. Call.
Can I say something? So when it comes to data protection, is my topic, and by chance my master thesis was about information security for NGOs. Well, the problem is from the NGOs managers. They don't understand what is security. They don't understand the data of which they hold. So it's not only responsibility, but those managers or those owners of this data. And nowadays, this EU GDPR is for profit organization, but non-profit organizations might be also under that regulation.
So that's a task force under the in this new alliance and this community. It has to be addressed, must be addressed. It's a core component. But and Mika, you're the last commenter. Then we're off from the panel.
I just want to say that it's an excellent question, very good point, and I mean it would take a whole long discussion. Just it's interesting that if any state, like if our state started gathering as much it works, as much data that some technological companies are gathering from us at the moment, we would be very alerted. We would be fighting for our rights. But some fruit companies from US, for example, we are easily giving all of that information, no problem, so that we can watch videos and have some services. On the other hand, those companies now own huge number of data that could be used for peace building. And there's an interesting question, and there are people who can answer it better, whether that kind of data could be partly open sourced or partly used for peace building as well, since it's already gathered. But the discussion continues.
Okay. Thank you to the panelists and to the audience. And I think that we now have 26 minutes of. Yeah.
Is it working? No? Okay, thank you. This is a very interesting, like a Men in Black or like Human in Black. Thank you so much for the discussion. It's been very interesting to listen to it. And I'm happy to tell you that this is not the end of the conversation. The Peacetech is here to stay here in Finland, in the world. And I would like to invite you all to build this new technology with us. And if you would like to discuss and follow the discussion about Peacetech in general, I invite you to follow us on Peacetech Forum. It's a community, and I hope that we are the base of the community, we here tonight, and the people who are watching us through the stream. And then, for example, I have something that might be very interesting for many of you, and I'm very excited about this. And this is the first time I'm telling about this for a large audience. And I'm from Helsinki Tech Company, one of the organizers, and we have a surprise for you. Ape, can you come a bit closer? Thank you. So